Hey there, I'm Ryan Boehme, and you're tuning into So You Want to Teach Percussion. This video series is designed particularly for my current Percussion Methods students. Since they aren't able to have a typical Percussion Methods experience due to the current global pandemic, these videos are designed to give them a foundation of the technique outside of class time so that we have more time to play when we're together. But I also hope this video series can be helpful to any music educators out there. Today, we're going to continue talking about timpani. If you haven't seen part 1, click the link up here to check it out. In that video, you'll learn all about playing position and playing technique. So by now, your students know how to make good sounds on timpani, but this is only half the battle, you see. In case there wasn't enough to think about already, your students also need to know how to tune the timpani, and they need to know which mallets are going to be best for each passage they play. In this video, we're going to talk about tuning and mallet choice. So grab your tuning fork, and let's get started! First, we're going to talk about tuning. For most pitched percussion instruments, percussionists don't really have to worry about playing in tune. We just throw down our stick or mallet, and we trust that the instrument is going to be in tune for us. But once your students sit down behind timpani, they're in charge of intonation, which can be a little bit intimidating, especially for younger students. So let's talk about how tuning works on timpani, and how you can get your students to become proficient timpani tuners in no time. In this clip, you have a nice shot of some of the pedals on these drums. The timpani I'm using are known as Dresden-style drums. With Dresden drums, each pedal has a clutch that locks the pedal in place after tuning. These are most common in university or professional situations. In middle school or high school band rooms, it's much more likely that you'll see drums like these. These are known as balanced action drums. The pedals are more centered for each drum, and none of them have locks that keep them in place. But the function of the pedals is the exact same as what you'll see on the Dresden drums. If I hit a drum and push my toes to the floor, pushing the pedal down, it's going to bring the counter hoop of the drum down onto the drum head, adding tension and raising the pitch of the drum. Conversely, if I push down my heel so that the toe end of the pedal rises, the counter hoop will rise, releasing tension, and the pitch of the drum is going to drop. It's also important to consider the general pitch range on each drum. These ranges will vary slightly from one set of timpani to the next, but the ranges that I'm going to show you are ranges that should be achievable on any set of timpani, with certain models of timpani having a few extra notes on either end of the range. The range of the 32-inch drum is D to A. The range of the 29-inch drum is F to C. The range of the 26-inch drum is B flat to F. And the range of the 23-inch drum is D to A, an octave above the 32-inch drum. If you have a 20-inch timpano in your setup, the range for that drum is F to C, an octave above the 29-inch drum. If you're familiar with music theory, you'll notice that if you look at the low end of the ranges, it spells out a B-flat major triad in first inversion, and each drum has the range of a perfect fifth interval. So the upper end of the ranges spells out an F major triad in first inversion.
Hello, Mr. Boehme. I didn't come here to do music theory. I came here to play some drums.
Well, generic percussion student, before you play some drums, you have to know where to set your required pitches. So let's look at this tuning scheme. There's only two notes here. Our lowest note is A, and our highest note is D. The D can only go on the 26-inch drum, so we're all set there. But what about the A? Well, we know we have two choices, the 32-inch drum or the 29-inch drum. If I put the A on the 32-inch drum, it's sitting at the highest point of that drum's range. That means there's going to be a lot of tension on the head, so my articulation is going to be emphasized a little more than my resonance. But if I put the A on the 29-inch drum, it sits right in the middle of the range, which is going to give us a nice balance between articulation and resonance. Not to mention the fact that the D is already sitting in the middle range of the 26-inch drum. So if I put the A on the 29-inch drum, then both of those notes are sitting right in that sweet spot. So let's talk about actually tuning the drums. Your students are going to benefit most if they start with the lowest note that they're given, and then work their way up from there. So first we're going to tune the A. A tuning fork is going to be super useful for your students. Most tuning forks are tuned to 440 Hz, which is an A. After you give the fork a little smack to get the prongs vibrating, you can hold this part up to your ear, and you should hear an A. Pitch pipes and electronic tuners can be really useful in personal practice sessions, but a tuning fork is going to allow your students to quietly find an A in performance settings. Alright, I've got my A. Now I'm going to totally lower the tension on the 29-inch drum by pushing the heel of the pedal all the way down. Starting from the very bottom of the range, I'm going to hit the drum once and gradually tune up to the A. I prefer to use my mallet and get my ear very close to the drum. If the drum stops ringing before I find my note, I can lightly tap the head again with the mallet. Using the mallet is going to allow you to hear the fundamental pitch of the drum without having to be too loud. This will be useful when your students have to change pitches in the middle of a piece. Notice that I'm keeping my tuning fork near my ear the whole time I'm searching for the note. If the fork stops ringing at any point, I'll get it vibrating again so that I always have the reference pitch. If I go past the note I'm trying to tune, it's tempting to try to find my pitch by lowering the pedal slightly. However, when your students do this, even if they find the pitch they're looking for, it leaves the head in a state of less tension, which is going to cause the head to react differently than what your students are used to. Instead, if you pass the pitch you're looking for, lower the pitch all the way and start from the bottom of the range again. Then, you can find your pitch while keeping the tension on the head, resulting in a head that's going to react how your students will expect. We've got our first note now, and we're going to use the first note to help us find the second note. To do this, your students need to understand intervals. An interval is the amount of space between two pitches. For A and D, for instance, the interval is a perfect fourth, A, B, C, D. The most common method for remembering this interval is using the melody for Here Comes the Bride.
Here comes the bride.
That was so beautiful. So now we know what a perfect fourth sounds like. Let's use the A we found on the 29-inch drum to help us find the D on the 26-inch drum. I'm going to start with the pedal on the 26-inch drum at its lowest position since I'm about to tune it. Once I have the sound of the A from the 29-inch drum in my ears, I'm going to think about Here Comes the Bride, which will give me the D that I need for the 26-inch drum. With my desired pitch in mind, I'm going to tune the 26-inch just like I tuned the 29-inch, starting from the bottom and gradually raising the pitch until I find the note. Then I can check the pitch in relation to the 29-inch drum and make sure I'm right on the money. Doing this efficiently is going to take some practice. Remember, unlike your wind and string players, percussionists don't spend all of their time around pitches and intervals, so it's going to take practice before they can quickly and confidently find the intervals that they need. If you're a music educator who isn't a percussionist, I'm sure you'll have a lot of advice to give your students in terms of finding and recognizing intervals. As a fellow percussionist, what helped me in the beginning was practicing along with the piano and singing or humming intervals into a tuning app. Using these two tools, your students are going to start to recognize their sharp and flat tendencies. Then they can make adjustments until they can consistently sing and hear all of their intervals they need. So for that scenario, we only had to tune 2 pitches among our 4 drums. But what if you only have 2 drums, let's say a 26-inch and a 29-inch, and your composer gives you this tuning scheme? With 2 drums, you obviously won't be able to have all of these notes ready to go at all times. But we already know that the A works really nicely on the 29-inch drum, and the D, E, and F all fit within the range of the 26-inch drum. To pull this off, your students are going to have to practice tuning while playing. This is a more advanced technique that takes a fair amount of practice to coordinate. Here's a short passage I made up where the 26-inch drum is shifting between our top 3 notes. In this clip, you can see I'm moving the pedal simultaneously with the stroke of the mallet. This allows each pitch to ring fully. If I move the pedal too much in between notes, you start to hear some glissandos between the notes. Unless a composer specifically asks for a glissando, the goal is for the audience to not hear any glissandos. As your students are smoothing out the feet with this technique, they may start to play like this, where they're so focused on the tuning that they forget to pay attention to their hands. As your students get more comfortable with the technique, remind them to keep the hands smooth and unaffected by what the feet have to do here. Your students will start to learn how the pedals feel for each drum in your band room, and the more they practice tuning while playing, the more they can rely on their muscle memory to find the notes they need in their timpani part. It's also useful to invest in timpani with tuning gauges. Most timpani these days include tuning gauges, but it's definitely something you want to check before you buy timpani. These gauges will have note names that are adjustable so that your students can set each note name to its corresponding point on the drum. Assuming the gauges are set correctly, your students can then use the gauges as a visual reference for finding notes quickly. Depending on the age of the drums, some gauges might look like the ones I'm using in this video. While it's most useful to have gauges that include most or all of the pitches your students need, they can still refer to the empty spots on a gauge to know where the pitches are on the drum. For instance, on this 26-inch drum, I know the D is here, the E is here, and and the F is here. I could also add some tape on the empty part of this gauge so that I can write where each note is. Okay, back to playing this passage. If I don't want to take a risk tuning the drum simultaneously with my playing, I might muffle the D as I'm playing the first A, which cuts out all of the sound from the 26-inch and gives me more time to find the E. Then I'll do the same thing to find the F, and so on. This is definitely a safer tuning method, as it prevents the possibility of hearing glissandos between changing pitches. However, combining muffling and tuning concepts complicates things very quickly, so your students will have to practice this method slowly to get it really smooth and consistent. And that's the gist of tuning timpani. Be sure to emphasize to your percussionists the importance of being able to sing and identify intervals. The more they practice this concept early on, the better off they're going to be on all of their timpani parts. Finally, we're going to talk about mallet choice. Just like I mentioned in the bass drum episode, there are tons of mallets to choose from tons of different brands. But I'm going to show you the 3 kinds of mallets you'll want in your band room so that your students can make a ton of different sounds. The mallets I've been using so far are general mallets. Your students will probably use general mallets the most on timpani. They work well for single notes because it doesn't take too much manipulation of the grip and the lift to achieve the desired articulation. They can also sound really nice for rolls. Then there are soft mallets. These mallets will usually have a fluffier head and they'll have a much warmer articulation. They're nice for louder playing without sounding too harsh. And they're great for acquiring that sustained sound we talked about with timpani rolls. And finally, there are hard mallets. These will have a felt head that is more tight than a general mallet, giving a stronger articulation by default. They're great for playing that involves a lot of repeated notes on a single drum, as your students won't have to work as hard to consistently articulate faster notes with hard mallets. And they're useful for loud rolls, but they can get harsh quickly if your students don't compensate for the heavier articulation by decreasing their mallet velocity. You can also find medium soft, medium hard, and lots of other different hardnesses of timpani mallets. But as long as you have a pair of general, soft, and hard mallets, your students can cover just about anything they need to play on timpani. I hope this video has helped you gain a better understanding of timpani tuning and mallet choice. There are a lot of moving parts when it comes to playing timpani, and it's easy for students to get kind of shy or intimidated when they're playing this beast of an instrument. But after your students spend some time breaking down the techniques, it's easily one of the most rewarding percussion instruments to play. That's it for now. I'm Boehme, and thanks for tuning in to So You Want to Teach Percussion.